Daniel Cole walked into the large chamber of the Galactic Council, with his hands folded behind his back. He was the human envoy, chosen to speak for Earth for the first time in a century. The room was massive, taller than any building on Earth, with walls that seemed alive, glowing faintly in colors he could not name. Alien delegates from dozens of species filled the chamber, their eyes and senses fixed on him. Some observed calmly, others with suspicion, and a few with open hostility. Daniel's heart beat fast, but his expression stayed steady. He had trained for this moment for years, learning the languages, the customs, and even the subtle gestures that would show respect to these powerful beings. He had been told by Earth's leaders that this mission was critical. A failure could mean war, but he also believed that diplomacy could succeed if the Council was willing to listen. He cleared his throat and began to speak. Honorable delegates, I come in peace, representing the people of Earth. We hope to establish new trade, cooperation, and understanding between our worlds. Humanity is ready to share knowledge and technology, and to learn from yours. A murmur spread across the chamber. Some delegates whispered among themselves. Daniel noticed that High Arbiter Corval, the most feared member of the Council, watched him carefully. Corval's skin was dark and metallic, with lines that glowed faintly when he moved. His eyes had no emotion, but Daniel felt them pierce through him. Peace, Corval said at last, his voice deep and echoing. Peace is easy to speak of, human. But the Council has seen your species grow quickly. You live on a dangerous world, and yet you expand without caution. Do you believe you can handle the laws of the galaxy? Daniel nodded calmly. We understand your concerns. We wish to operate within the Council's laws. Our goal is cooperation, not conflict. Corval leaned back slightly, and for a moment Daniel thought he might have succeeded. But then Corval's lips moved in a slow, deliberate curl. We have watched Earth. We have watched your ships. We have studied your battles. You are strong, human. Too strong. And strength without control leads to chaos. Some among us believe you are a danger. Daniel's chest tightened. He knew there had always been fear of humanity. Humans were called Deathworlders in some Council histories, a term meaning they could survive and adapt to deadly environments. On some planets, their enemies claimed humans were reckless, brutal, and unstoppable. Daniel had hoped that face-to-face, reason could calm such fears. Before he could respond, the chamber doors opened behind him. Council guards, tall and armored in black suits that shimmered like liquid, stepped in. Daniel turned slowly, sensing something wrong. High Arbiter Corval's voice echoed again. It is unfortunate, human, but the Council has decided that your presence here is a violation. You have been accused of breaking the laws of our galaxy. We regret that diplomacy has failed. What laws? Daniel asked, keeping his voice steady. I have done nothing but speak the truth and follow all protocols. Your very existence threatens the balance of the Council, Corval said. Your species cannot be trusted. You will be judged, and punishment is required. Daniel's eyes widened, but he did not panic. He understood quickly there would be no trial. No real hearing. The Council had already made its choice. He sent a quick encrypted message back to Earth, hoping Mission Control could react. On the human ship near the Council world, Captain Laura Price received the message. Her fingers hovered over the communication panel. The message ended abruptly. The live feed went black a moment later, leaving only a frozen frame of Daniel standing in the chamber. Facing the Council, Daniel's mind raced. He glanced at the guards, trying to find any chance of escape. None appeared. He realized that this was not a Council procedure, it was an execution. High Arbiter Corval signaled, and the guards moved closer. Energy lances ignited along their arms, glowing blue and humming with power. Daniel took a deep breath and lifted his hands, showing he would not resist. Please, he said. "Allow a fair hearing. Let me speak with the council members individually. Let me show that humanity wishes peace." Corville's eyes did not soften. "Peace cannot undo the threat you represent. The council has spoken. Your sentence is final." Daniel's heart sank. He closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of Earth, of his family, of the people who believed in him. He whispered quietly, "Forgive them." The guards activated the lances. Light filled the chamber, and Daniel felt a sudden pressure that pushed his senses outward. His last thought was a hope that Earth would understand, that they would not blame him, and that somehow humans could survive this moment. The feed from the chamber ended. On the horizon, the human ship near the council world, alarms blared. Laura Price and her team stared at the dark screen. The signal had been cut. A moment later, a backup packet arrived, automatically transmitted from the council network. Laura opened it carefully. Inside was proof of the execution video, energy readings, and sensor logs. Every detail confirmed what they feared. The council had planned this in secret. Daniel had been sacrificed to make a statement. Humanity was dangerous and could be eliminated if needed. Laura forwarded the files to Earth with the highest priority code. The Human Fleet Commander's office went silent as the transmission reached the war room on Earth. President Aaron Blake watched the video with his advisors. The room was tense. No one spoke. The footage showed Daniel standing in the chamber. And then it showed the glowing lances igniting. His expression remained calm, even in the final moment. The president felt a heavy weight pressing down on him. "This changes everything," Blake said quietly. His voice was firm. "They have killed our envoy. They have killed our representative. Humanity cannot be ignored or disrespected again." The Joint Command officers nodded silently. They knew what this meant. The Council had crossed a line. For generations, humans had survived deadly worlds, war, and famine. They had fought when others thought they were weak. But this was an attack on humanity's right to exist. Aaron Blake turned to his staff. "Activate the Annihilation Protocol. Prepare every fleet and defense system. This is no longer diplomacy. This is survival." Across the planet, people reacted in different ways. Some were stunned, unable to believe that the Council would execute a human envoy without trial. Others, like former soldiers and veterans, clenched their fists. In small towns, engineers, pilots, and technicians were called to duty. Factories switched from civilian work to military production. Even young cadets were mobilized to support ships and supply lines. In orbit, human ships changed formation. Patrol routes shifted to strategic positions. Warships powered up weapons and shields. Crews returned from leave and began emergency drills. The atmosphere was tense but disciplined. No one panicked. Humans had faced worse odds before and survived. On the horizon, Admiral Karen Holt stood alone on the command deck, reading sealed orders from Earth. Her expression was serious. She knew these orders were not just for a single battle, they were for a war humanity had hoped to avoid. But she also knew that the Council had given them no choice. Megan Lewis, a young engineer skilled in quantum drives and space sensors, was recruited immediately for special missions. She left her home and joined a secret shipyard on the moon, preparing technology that could give humanity an edge in battle. Jason Cole, Daniel's older brother, received a visit from a military officer. Jason had been a former Marine and a decorated soldier. Seeing the footage of his brother's execution filled him with anger, but also focus. He agreed to join a special operations unit that would strike where it hurt the Council most. The human fleet, across Earth and in orbit, entered full operational mode. Communications channels hummed with new codes, fleet positions, and emergency orders. Cities shifted to production for warships, ammunition, and advanced weapons. The Annihilation Protocol was not mindless violence, it was a carefully planned system to neutralize threats and prevent further attacks on humanity. On the human command ship, Laura Price contacted President Blake by secure link. "Sir, they have killed him. We have proof." Blake's eyes were steady. "We proceed. Not for revenge alone, but for survival. Humanity cannot allow a species to kill our own without consequence. Activate the protocol. Protect our people. Make sure the Council knows that killing a human envoy has consequences no one will ignore." As the first part of humanity's response began, the world held its breath. Across the planet, millions watched transmissions and listened to news reports. The death of a single man had changed the fate of billions. Humanity was waking to its own power. A species born on harsh worlds, now ready to fight a battle that no alien council could ignore. The Annihilation Protocol would not be merciless, but it would be unstoppable. Every ship, every weapon, every human skill was now part of a single purpose: ensure that what happened to Daniel Cole would never happen again. And in the silence of the war room, President Blake knew one thing clearly: this was only the beginning. The sky above Earth was full of quiet tension. Cities glowed with emergency lights as factories switched from ordinary production to the construction of warships and weapons. Across the planet, people felt the anger and fear that had spread after Daniel Cole's death. Families watched the footage again and again. Some in disbelief, others in silent determination. Megan Lewis worked in a hidden shipyard on the moon. The station was massive, a hollow ring spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. She checked the quantum drives she had designed, making sure they could function for long-range jumps and rapid maneuvers. The engineers around her moved quickly, following precise instructions. There was no chatter, no laughter, only the hum of machinery and the quiet tapping of consoles. Megan thought about Daniel Cole. She had never met him personally, but she knew his work as an envoy had been brave. Now, the work she did could help protect millions of humans and give the fleet an edge over the Council's forces. She had no fear of the Council fleets. Humans had survived far worse. The real danger, she knew, was failing to act. In Texas, Jason Cole sat in a small, dimly lit room. He held his brother's tablet, the one that had recorded the execution footage. His hands trembled slightly as he replayed Daniel's last moments. The anger was hot in his chest, but he did not let it overwhelm him. He had been a soldier before. He had faced enemies in places most humans would never survive. Now, he had a mission. A military officer entered quietly. "Jason, your experience is needed. You know the Council's tactics better than most. We need you in a Black Ops unit. You will strike where it will hurt them the most." Jason looked up. "I want to go where it matters, where it counts. Not just small fights. I want to make sure they feel the cost for what they did to Daniel." The officer nodded. "Understood. Prepare immediately. Departure is in 2 hours." While Earth mobilized, the human fleet in orbit began to move. Ships shifted formations, engines glowing faintly against the darkness of space. Weapons, systems powered up. The fleet was ready. But the first orders were not for blind attacks. Every movement had been planned for years, anticipating a betrayal like the one Daniel had suffered. Humans had prepared for this day long before the Council decided to kill an envoy. On the command ship Horizon, Admiral Karen Holt studied a holographic map of the Council's border systems. Red dots indicated strongholds and military bases, while blue dots marked neutral or friendly stations. She tapped the map, reviewing projected patrol routes. "We hit the supply lines first," she said to her officers. "We take out their fuel and ammunition depots. We don't attack civilians, but we make sure the Council cannot recover quickly." A junior officer, Lieutenant Aaron Mills, looked worried. "Admiral, what about the civilians on these planets? Some of them have no part in this." Are we risking lives unnecessarily? Holt's face was firm. We do not risk unnecessary lives. We strike only what is needed to protect our own people. The Council chose this war. They chose to execute our envoy. We respond with precision, not rage. But we respond fully. Meanwhile, Jason's Black Ops team boarded a small stealth corvette called Silver Dawn. The ship was small, fast, and built for infiltration. Jason checked the weapons and equipment. Short-range coil pistols, energy grenades, and portable shields. He felt the familiar calm that came before action. A soldier's focus. This was different from a normal battle. They would slip past the Council's defenses, strike inside a fortress, and leave before the enemy even realized what had happened. As the fleet jumped to the edge of Council space, tension filled the corridors. Megan monitored sensors that could detect hidden energy fields and cloaked ships. She provided the fleet with the knowledge they needed to move unseen, to strike first, and disappear before the Council could respond. Every calculation she made was precise. One mistake could mean disaster. On a distant fortress, Warlord Theres reviewed the Council's defenses. She had heard of humanity's speed and adaptability, but she did not expect what was coming. Her sensors showed nothing unusual. She believed humans would follow predictable patterns, charging straight into traps like reckless animals. She smiled, thinking of the glory she would have when the humans failed. But humans were not predictable. Humans were clever, patient, and willing to pay any cost for survival. Admiral Holt had taught her crews to use every advantage: gravity fields, debris clouds, sensor blind spots. The Council's fortress would not know what hit it until it was too late. The first strike came without warning. Human destroyers moved in tight formation around small moons and asteroids, slingshotting to gain speed. They targeted fuel depots, energy generators, and weapons platforms. Explosions lit the dark void, shaking the fortress as if a storm had arrived. Council sensors scrambled to track the attacks, but the humans used advanced cloaking and calculated approaches. Inside the fortress, alarms blared. Theres's soldiers rushed to their stations, confused by the sudden destruction. Automated defenses fired at empty spaces, missing the hidden human ships that moved like shadows. Theres realized too late that the humans had studied every patrol, every weapon placement, and every weak point. Jason and his team approached the fortress in Silver Dawn, moving silently through a debris field. They bypassed outer sensors, using gravity shadows and small hidden thrusters. Jason felt the tension in his chest, but he did not falter. Every step had been planned. Every move had been calculated. They were ghosts in enemy space. The team landed inside the fortress through an airlock that had been disabled by small drones. Corridors stretched ahead, lit by dim emergency lights. Jason led the team with quiet precision, avoiding patrols and security cameras. They moved fast, silent, and deadly. They did not seek unnecessary combat. They sought the heart of the fortress, the command node. Meanwhile, the fleet continued to attack the outer defenses. Human railguns and kinetic lances tore through armored turrets. Council ships tried to respond, but humans used long-range maneuvers and gravity assists to stay out of danger. For every Council ship that fired, humans had a counter. For every turret that aimed, humans had already calculated the angle and speed needed to avoid it. Theres watched in frustration as her outer defenses collapsed. They are clever and ruthless. Inside the fortress, Jason's team reached the main control core. He placed a small device on the door, which silently hacked the system. Security cameras went dark. Doors unlocked. The team moved inside without triggering alarms. Jason paused for a moment, thinking of his brother. He whispered quietly, "This is for Daniel." At that moment, the human fleet broadcast a message across the system. It was Daniel Cole's voice, calm and composed. Humans seek peace, the recording said. We wish to learn, to cooperate, and to survive. Jason and his team added their own words. You killed one of our own. We are here to remind you that humanity does not forgive when justice is denied. The message spread across every council channel. Soldiers stopped, listening to the words. Confusion and fear spread. They had expected a chaotic attack, but instead, they heard reason and resolve. Humans were not mindless killers. They were calculated, precise, and willing to strike where it mattered most. Jason activated the core overload. Lights flashed, alarms screamed, and a deep vibration ran through the fortress. The human fleet pulled back to a safe distance. Outside, the fortress began to tear itself apart. Explosions shook the station. Debris flew into space, and power systems failed one by one. Therese realized her fortress was lost. Her forces had been outmaneuvered, her weapons neutralized. She had underestimated the humans. They were not just strong, they were intelligent, adaptive, and unstoppable when pushed to their limits. As the fortress collapsed, Jason's team returned to Silver Dawn. They navigated through the debris field, slipping past patrols that were still reeling from the sudden loss. Every member of the team felt a mixture of relief and grim satisfaction. They had succeeded, and the message was clear. Humans would not be ignored, and the Council would pay the price for killing one of their own. Back on Earth, President Blake watched the reports in real time. He did not celebrate. He understood the cost of war and the lives that could be lost. But he also knew that humanity had taken the first step in showing the galaxy that they were not weak and they were not to be underestimated. Megan Lewis received messages from the fleet, updating her on the success of the strike. She allowed herself a brief moment of pride, then returned to her work. The Council would not stop here. They would prepare for retaliation. Humanity had to be ready for every move. Jason, standing on the bridge of Silver Dawn, looked at the stars. The Council had believed humans were reckless, emotional, and dangerous. They were correct, but humans had also learned control, planning, and precision. Daniel Cole's death had started a chain of events that would change the galaxy. Humans had awoken, and no one would mistake them for weaklings ever again. The night was silent outside the fortress system. But in the human fleet, the quiet was filled with purpose. Ships powered down their weapons temporarily, crews catching brief moments of rest. Tomorrow, the Council would recover. But humanity had sent a message, and the galaxy would remember it. And somewhere in the darkness of space, High Arbiter Corval watched reports of the destruction. His face showed anger and disbelief. For the first time, he understood that humans were not just a species to be dismissed. They were a force born from harsh worlds, trained in survival, and ready to fight with everything they had. The war had begun in earnest. Humanity had struck, not out of vengeance alone, but out of necessity. They were showing the galaxy that killing a human envoy had consequences far greater than the Council had imagined. And in every command center, on every ship, the thought was the same. Daniel Cole had died, but his death had awakened the full power of a species that had survived impossible odds. The galaxy would never forget. The human fleet did not pause after the destruction of the Council fortress. The Council had expected a small response. Maybe one or two ships reacting with anger. They had not expected the precision, intelligence, and speed of the human strike. Across the system, fleets that had once thought humans were reckless realized they were facing a species that had prepared for war in secret. Admiral Karen Holt watched the holographic displays on horizon. Each blip of red showed Council ships trying to regroup. Each blue or green blip showed human forces moving with exact timing. She could almost feel the rhythm of battle, like a conductor leading an orchestra. Every strike had a purpose. Every move was calculated to weaken the Council without destroying everything. Sensor readings are showing increased activity in their secondary fleet, Megan Lewis reported from her station. They are moving to intercept smaller human units. But the attack vectors show predictable paths. We can anticipate their maneuvers. A1. Holt nodded. Then we stay on course. Force them to react. Keep our main fleet intact. Remember, we are not here to destroy planets, only their ability to threaten humanity. At the same time, Jason Cole and his team prepared for another mission. After their success in the first fortress, the Council had reinforced many stations, expecting humans to be reckless or emotional. Jason smiled grimly. They think fear will stop us, he said. They do not understand humans. The team boarded Silver Dawn again, checking every weapon and device. The Corvette was small, fast, and nearly invisible to the Council's standard sensors. Jason studied the map of the next target, a command hub in a Council border system. The hub controlled multiple fleets and supply lines. If they struck it, they would disrupt the Council's ability to respond for weeks. The jump through space was quiet. Jason looked at his crew, each member focused, silent, and ready. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were chosen for precision, for skill, and for calm under pressure. The Council had underestimated humans, believing that emotion would drive them. Humans used emotion, yes, but as fuel, not as guidance. Their actions were deliberate, controlled, and deadly. Meanwhile, the fleet moved in support. Larger human ships stayed just out of Council sensor range, using gravity wells and dark matter interference to hide their position. Megan monitored sensor streams, sending exact calculations to Holt so the fleet could avoid traps while remaining ready to strike. The Council commander in the target system, Warlord Therese, had learned something from the first strike. She ordered her fleet into defensive positions, thinking the humans would repeat their attack patterns. But humans were not predictable. Admiral Holt had studied their tactics long before the war. Every move had a purpose. Every misdirection was planned. Jason's team landed on the command hub's surface using stealth pods that blended with the atmosphere. They moved along narrow maintenance corridors, avoiding patrols and automated defense drones. Each member of the team followed Jason's lead, trusting his judgment and their training. Inside the hub, Council officers hurried to monitor incoming transmissions. Alarms rang as their systems detected a small breach. Therese assumed it was a diversion, thinking the fleet outside would strike while humans were trapped inside. She was wrong. The team was already moving toward the command node, bypassing guards and cameras with silent efficiency. Jason paused at a junction and whispered, "We move in pairs. We hit the control center first, then the data cores. Avoid combat unless necessary." His team nodded. They understood that speed and precision were their allies. The Council's strength was in numbers, but humans used brains and planning to turn numbers into weaknesses. Outside, human ships struck at key points. Railguns tore through armories and weapons depots. Supply lines collapsed. Council ships tried to respond but moved slowly, uncoordinated by the sudden strikes and calculated misdirection of the human fleet. Every Council move had been anticipated. Humans avoided unnecessary damage while targeting the points that mattered most. Jason's team reached the control center. Using portable hacking devices, they disabled security systems and accessed the Council's command network. He connected a data uplink to Horizon, allowing Admiral Holt to see live feed of the inside of the hub. "Core systems are vulnerable," Jason reported. "We can disrupt their communication and reroute supplies. The fleet outside will have a clear advantage once we act." Holt gave the order, "Strike now. Timing is everything. Do not give them a chance to adapt." A series of controlled explosions disabled key relay nodes. Council officers rushed to respond, but the systems they relied on were already under human control. Jason's team moved to the data cores and began downloading strategic plans, fleet movements, and communications logs. Every piece of information was vital for Earth's understanding of the Council's strengths and weaknesses. Therese realized her mistake too late. Her command hub was compromised. Orders she gave were ignored or rerouted by humans. Ships under her command collided or were trapped in gravity wells. Systems she believed were secure were now turned against her. Panic spread through the Council forces, though she tried to maintain composure. Jason's team broadcast another message over Council channels. This time, it was not just Daniel Cole's voice. Jason added a clear statement. Humans do not strike without purpose. We fight to protect our people. We do not harm innocents, but we do not forgive those who take our own. Remember this. The Council soldiers paused. For the first time, they understood that humans were not just strong. They were smart, relentless, and morally disciplined in a way that made them unpredictable. Humans could strike hard and vanish without warning. They could destroy key systems without harming unnecessary lives. They could outthink, outplan, and outlast any enemy that underestimated them. As the hub's systems failed, Jason's team moved back to Silver Dawn. Explosions shook the corridors, lights flickered, and alarms screamed. The team exited the hub through maintenance tunnels, merging with small transport pods that returned them to orbit. Outside, the fleet executed the final phase. Concentrated strikes on remaining defense satellites, leaving the Council forces scattered and disorganized. On horizon, Admiral Holt watched as Council systems collapsed one by one. They were wrong. Humanity never fights blind. We hit where it counts, and we withdraw before they can respond. Megan Lewis monitored the transmissions, sending updated calculations to the fleet and field teams. Every strike and maneuver had been planned in advance. Humans were not just reacting, they were leading the war. They were the hunters, and the Council was beginning to feel it. On Earth, President Blake received reports from the fleet and the ground teams. He did not celebrate. He knew that every victory came with risk. He also knew that Daniel Cole's death had set humanity on a path that could not be reversed. The Council had believed humans would be cautious or frightened by the loss of one man. Instead, the loss had awakened a species that would not back down, no matter the cost. In a hidden room on a neutral station, Sierra, a young alien analyst from a Council member world, watched the broadcasts with wide eyes. She had never seen humans like this, not as reckless monsters, but as precise, intelligent, and unstoppable. She realized that her own world could not ignore Earth anymore. Humans were no longer a species to be dismissed. Jason and his team returned to a small base in a remote system. They debriefed quickly, analyzing every detail. Supplies were restocked, weapons checked, and plans reviewed for the next mission. Even in rest, the team remained vigilant. The Council would adapt, and humans had to be ready for every move. Therese, meanwhile, sent desperate messages to her remaining fleets. She ordered reinforcements, new patrols, and emergency repairs. She tried to rally her officers, but morale was falling. The humans had shown that they could strike anywhere, anytime, and leave without being trapped. Her forces were confused, scattered, and beginning to question her leadership. Jason looked at his team and spoke quietly. They think they can scare us. They think we will make mistakes. But humans do not make mistakes like they do. We plan, we adapt, and we survive. The human fleet moved on, leaving the destroyed hub and disrupted fleets behind. It was not chaos. They were not looting or attacking civilians. It was controlled, precise, and purposeful. Humanity had proven that they could fight smarter than the Council, strike harder than expected, and remain disciplined even in the heat of battle. On horizon, Admiral Holt addressed her officers. The Council has underestimated us. Do not let this make us arrogant. Every system we hit, every fleet we engage, is a test of our discipline. Remember what Daniel Cole died for. Remember why we fight. And remember, we strike only when necessary. But when we strike fully. Megan Lewis smiled faintly. Her calculations had worked perfectly. Ships had moved as she predicted. Systems had been disabled before the Council even realized they were under attack. Her work had saved lives and turned the tide of the first real battles. She returned to monitoring other systems, knowing that the war was only beginning. Jason Cole sat quietly, thinking of his brother. Daniel had gone to represent humanity, to seek peace. The Council had killed him. And yet, his death had awakened something stronger than revenge. A clear purpose, a calculated response, and the full power of humanity, focused on survival and justice. The galaxy was beginning to see humans for what they truly were. Not just Deathworlders, not just survivors, but a species that could fight, plan, and outthink enemies who thought themselves invincible. The message had been sent. The Council would remember it, and humans would not stop until they were safe, until justice was done, and until the galaxy learned that killing a human envoy came at a price no one could ignore.